July 9th, 1983. A banker walks into the Kuala Lumpur Hilton, checks into room 412, and within hours, he's dead. Shot twice in the head. The official story? Suicide. The problem? The gun was found 3 feet away from his body. His briefcase, containing documents about a $10 billion fraud, vanished. His name was Jalil Ibrahim, and he wasn't just any banker. He was the key witness in what would become Hong Kong's most explosive corporate collapse, one that destroyed an empire in 72 hours and triggered a chain of murders the authorities desperately wanted buried. This is the story the mainstream media covered once, then quietly forgot. No Netflix documentary, no best-selling book, no viral YouTube deep dive. Until now. I'm talking about the Creditors Group, a company that went from $0 to $10 billion in just 4 years, became Hong Kong's 8th largest corporation, then imploded in 3 days. And in the aftermath, 5 suspicious deaths, forged documents, a taxi driver who claimed he was paid to frame someone, and a government that sealed critical files for decades. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this happened, who really benefited from the collapse, and why the truth was buried deeper than the bodies. To understand the collapse, you need to understand the rise. And the rise was impossible. Hong Kong's real estate market is boiling. Property prices double every 18 months. Developers are minting fortunes overnight. But there's one rule that separates winners from losers. You need capital. Deep, generational capital. All money. Enter George Tan Soon Jin, a 32-year-old Malaysian nobody with no real estate experience, no corporate pedigree, and barely any starting capital. Within 48 months, he'll control assets worth more than $10 billion. How? Well, that's where things get interesting. Because George Tan discovered something the old money developers missed. You don't need capital if you understand financial engineering. Here's the scheme, and pay close attention because this 3-step loop is how he built the empire. Step 1. Buy a cheap property using a small deposit and maximum leverage. Step 2. Immediately revalue that property at 3-5x the purchase price using friendly appraisers. Step 3. Use the inflated valuation as collateral to borrow more money from banks. Then repeat. It's a Ponzi structure disguised as real estate development. But here's the genius. In Hong Kong's superheated 1980 market, it actually worked. Properties were appreciating so fast that the fake valuations eventually became real. The lie turned into truth. And George Tan wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what he was doing. Former colleagues describe him as brilliant but reckless, a man who understood that in a bubble, perception is reality. As long as banks believed Creditors was worth billions, it was worth billions. By 1982, Creditors Group owned prime real estate in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore. They had hotels, office towers, development projects. On paper, the company was worth 10 billion Hong Kong dollars, roughly $1.3 billion USD, equivalent to about $4.2 billion today. George Tan was on magazine covers. Hong Kong's boy wonder, the man who beat the old guard at their own game. And then everything fell apart. October 8th, 1983. Friday afternoon. Creditors stock is trading at $3.80 per share. The company has just announced a major acquisition. Investor confidence is high. October 11th, 1983. Monday morning. Creditors Group is insolvent. Stock suspended. Banks freeze credit lines. The empire is dead. What happened in 72 hours? One word, Gammon House. Gammon House was a luxury office building in Hong Kong's Central District. Prime location, blue-chip tenants, flagship property. In June 1981, Creditors purchased it for 998 million Hong Kong dollars, roughly 128 million US dollars. At the time, it was the most expensive property transaction in Hong Kong history. There was just one problem. Creditors didn't actually have $128 million. So they did what they always did, financial engineering. Here's the real transaction. Creditors bought Gammon House from Malaysian tycoon Nick Mohammed Yusof for $128 million. But here's what actually happened. Creditors paid only $10 million cash up front. Borrowed $80 million from Bank Bumiputra Malaysia. The remaining $38 million, Nick Mohammed just forgave it. Called it a discount for friendship. Now, why would someone give a $38 million discount on the most expensive property in Hong Kong? Hold that question. Because it's about to get darker. 6 months after the purchase, Carrion secretly sold Gammon House to another company called Harper Investments for 1.68 billion Hong Kong dollars, a $700 million profit on paper. Except Harper was a shell company that Carrion secretly controlled. They were selling to themselves. Why? To book a massive fake profit, inflate their stock price, and use the inflated valuation to borrow even more money. This wasn't creative accounting. This was fraud. Plain and simple. And the person who arranged the financing, that banker in Kuala Lumpur I mentioned earlier, Jalil Ibrahim, senior executive at Bank Bhumiputra. Now here's where it collapses. In July 1983, Bank Bhumiputra's internal auditors started asking questions about the Gammon House loan. The numbers didn't add up. Where was the collateral? Who actually owned the building? Why were Malaysian public funds financing a Hong Kong real estate shell game? Jalil Ibrahim was called to explain. He started cooperating with investigators. He had documents, names, bank transfers, the entire scheme. July 9, 1983. Jalil Ibrahim checks into the Kuala Lumpur Hilton. Hours later, he's dead. 2 bullets to the head. The briefcase with documents? Gone. Malaysian police rule it suicide. A man shoots himself twice in the head, and the gun lands 3 feet from his body. With Jalil dead, the investigation slows. But Bank Bhumiputra's auditors don't stop. They demand repayment of the $80 million Gammon House loan. Carrion can't pay. They never had real money, just inflated valuations and paper profits. October 8, 1983. Bank Bhumiputra publicly demands repayment. By October 11, every bank in Hong Kong freezes Carrion's credit. The house of cards collapses. Stock suspended. Assets frozen. George Tan disappears. 72 hours. $10 billion. Gone. Now, most corporate collapse stories end here. Company implodes. Investors lose money. Executives get arrested or flee. Roll credits. But the Carrion collapse wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because within 18 months of the collapse, 5 people connected to the case would be dead. Death number 1, Jalil Ibrahim. July 1983. The banker. 2 bullets, suicide. Death number 2, October 1983. Jalil's assistant at Bank Bhumiputra dies in a car accident. Single vehicle crash. No witnesses. Death number 3, March 1985. Mac Foon, then forensic accountant investigating Carrion's books, stabbed to death in his Hong Kong apartment. Robbery gone wrong, police say. Except nothing was stolen. His Carrion files disappeared. Mac Foon then was 34 years old. Married, 1 daughter. Friends describe him as cautious, meticulous. Not someone who'd open his door to strangers. The killer walked past expensive electronics and jewelry. Took only documents. Death number 4, June 1985. Wong Ka Leung, taxi driver. Found hanged in his apartment. Suicide, police rule. But here's what's strange. 2 weeks before his death, Wong had given a statement to police claiming he was paid by someone to deliver a package to Jalil Ibrahim's hotel room the night of his death. He was ready to testify. Then he died. Death number 5, November 1985. Yusof Jamaluddin, Malaysian auditor investigating Bank Bhumiputra's Carrion loans, dies in a robbery in Kuala Lumpur. Again, nothing stolen except documents. 5 deaths. All ruled accidents, suicides, or random crime. All connected to one investigation. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I deal in facts, documents, evidence. So let me be clear, there is no definitive proof that these deaths were orchestrated hits. But let's look at what we do know. Fact: in 1986, Hong Kong businessman Bentley Ho was arrested for conspiracy to murder Jalil Ibrahim. Prosecutors alleged he hired hitmen on behalf of people who wanted the Carrion investigation stopped. Fact: Bentley Ho was convicted in 1989, sentenced to death, later commuted. But he maintained he was a scapegoat. Fact: Malaysian investigators found evidence that Bank Bhumiputra executives had embezzled millions from the Carrion loans. Several executives were later convicted of criminal breach of trust. In fact, George Tan fled Hong Kong in 1983. He was eventually arrested in Taiwan in 1989, extradited to Hong Kong, and convicted of fraud, sentenced to 3 years. He served 18 months. 18 months for a $10 billion fraud. The hitman got death. The architect got 18 months. Does that seem proportional to you? Remember that question from earlier? Why would Nick Mohammed Yusuf give Carrion a $38 million discount on Gammon House? Investigators believe Nick Mohammed was complicit in the fraud, that the discount was a kickback scheme. But he was never charged. He died in 2011, never having given testimony. The Malaysian government sealed critical Carrion files until 2028. Hong Kong sealed theirs until 2033. 50 years of silence. Okay, so let's step back. Because when you look at a collapse this big, this violent, you have to ask, who benefited? George Tan? He lost his empire, went to prison, became an international fugitive. The banks? They lost hundreds of millions. Investors? Wiped out. But here's where it gets interesting. In the aftermath of Carrion's collapse, several Hong Kong property assets were sold at fire sale prices. Prime real estate that Carrion had leveraged to the hilt suddenly became available for pennies on the dollar. And guess who bought them? Li Ka-shing's Chung Kong Holdings bought multiple Carrion properties. The Kwok family's Sun Hung Kai properties acquired Carrion developments. Henderson Land Development picked up distressed assets. To be absolutely clear, there's no evidence these buyers did anything illegal. They bought bankrupt assets at market prices during a liquidation. That's capitalism. But here's the pattern you need to see. Carrion's collapse consolidated Hong Kong's real estate market. In 1980, Hong Kong had 50-plus mid-sized developers competing for deals. After Carrion, that number dropped. The big families, Li Ka-shing, the Kwoks, the Kadoris, tightened their grip. The 1980s Hong Kong real estate boom that followed? Those same families captured most of the gains. Now, do they orchestrate Carrion's collapse? Almost certainly not. Did they benefit from it? Absolutely. This is how oligarchies consolidate. Not through conspiracy, but through crisis. When a competitor implodes, you're there to buy the pieces. But there's another beneficiary. One that's rarely discussed. The Malaysian government. Remember, Bank Bumi-Putra was a state-owned bank. The Carrion loans were public funds. When the fraud was exposed, it became Malaysia's worst financial scandal. The Malaysian parliament launched an investigation. The findings were explosive. Senior bank executives had embezzled millions. There were kickbacks, forged documents, offshore shell companies. But here's what didn't happen. The Malaysian government didn't expose who the executives were paying kickbacks to. Those names were redacted. Files sealed. Analysts believe, and this is educated speculation based on investigative journalism, that the kickbacks went to politically connected figures in Malaysia's ruling party. People too powerful to prosecute. So instead, the government found a scapegoat, Jalil Ibrahim. Dead men can't defend themselves. Blame the suicide victim. Close the case. So who benefited from burying the truth? Hong Kong's old money families, consolidated market share. Malaysian politicians avoided exposure. George Tan's partners stayed anonymous. The only people who didn't benefit? The victims. The investors who lost everything. The families of 5 dead men. The public that never got answers. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night about this case. It never really ended. A Hong Kong property developer suddenly announces massive losses. Stock crashes. Investors panic. Chinese real estate giant Evergrande collapses under $300 billion in debt. The structure? Buying properties with leverage, using inflated valuations as collateral, borrowing more. Sound familiar? The Carrion playbook never died. It just scaled up. Financial engineering. Leverage loops. Property valuations based on future potential rather than current cash flow. Shell companies buying from shell companies to create paper profits. Carrion wasn't an anomaly. It was a template. And this is why cases like Carrion matter. Not as historical curiosities, but as warnings. Because every generation of investors thinks this time it's different. that the fundamentals have changed, that the leverage is justified, until it's not. Here's what Carrion exposed about modern capitalism. 1. In asset bubbles, perception becomes reality. If banks believe you're rich, you are rich until the day they don't. 2. Financial engineering can disguise fundamental insolvency for years. Complexity is often a feature, not a bug. The more complicated the structure, the harder it is to see the fraud. 3. When systemic fraud is exposed, the powerful rarely pay. Scapegoats are found. Files are sealed. The system protects itself. George Tan served 18 months. The executives who embezzled millions got light sentences or weren't charged at all. The hitman got death. Justice wasn't blind. She just had her priorities straight. And maybe that's the real scandal here. Not the fraud itself. Fraud is old as commerce. Not even the murders, though those are unforgivable. The real scandal is the cover-up. The sealed files. The redacted names. The 50-year silence. Because when you bury the truth, you guarantee it will happen again. So let me bring this full circle. July 9th, 1983. Jalil Ibrahim checks into the Kuala Lumpur Hilton with documents that could expose a $10 billion fraud. Hours later, he's dead. The briefcase is gone. In 2019, a Malaysian journalist named Claire Recastle Brown published leaked documents from the original investigation. These were files that had been sealed for decades. And here's what they showed. The night Jalil died, hotel records show two people checked into adjacent rooms within minutes of each other. Jalil in 412, an unidentified guest in 414. Security footage from the lobby was lost by police. The forensic report noted gunpowder residue patterns inconsistent with suicide. Jalil's hotel room showed signs of a struggle. Furniture moved, broken glass that wasn't mentioned in the official police report. The unidentified guest in room 414 checked out at 3 a.m. Pay cash. No name in the registry. Security never questioned him. This wasn't suicide. It was execution. And here's what makes this unbearable. Jalil Ibrahim had a wife and 3 children. He was 37 years old. Friends say he was terrified in the weeks before his death. He knew he was in danger. He cooperated with investigators anyway, because he thought the truth mattered. He was wrong. The truth didn't matter. Power mattered. Money mattered. Truth got you killed. 5 men died. Hundreds of millions were stolen. A $10 billion empire vanished. And the people responsible. Most of them lived comfortably ever after. That's the real story of the Carrion collapse. Not a corporate failure. A murder. A cover-up. A system that values silence over justice. This is what Collapse Chronicles is about. Finding the corporate scandals that were buried. The stories the mainstream forgot or never told. Carrion should be as infamous as Enron, Theranos, or Madoff. But it's not. Because the people involved made sure of it. $10 billion empire. 72-hour collapse. 5 dead. Truth sealed for 50 years. If you want more stories like this, corporate mysteries that never got their documentary, business scandals erased from memory, subscribe. Because next week, we're covering the BCCI bank collapse, the CIA drug cartels, and a $20 billion bank that financed terrorists while governments looked the other way. Drop a comment if you'd heard of Carrion before this video. I'm willing to bet 99% of you hadn't. That's the point. They want you to forget. We won't let them. I'm Collapse Chronicles. Thanks for watching.